Hey everyone, this is Nelson from Priority Bicycles, and today I'm going to show you how to assemble your Priority Coast.
Before we get started, it's important to know that we always recommend that your bicycle be professionally assembled. Or if you choose to follow this video and do home assembly, we recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic safety check your bicycle before riding. Now let's get started.
First thing we're going to want to do is snap a photo of our box label here. This is going to have all our information of our bike, including the serial number, which is very useful in case you have any warranty issues. Now you can send us an email with that photo so we can keep it on file for you. Now let's get started. We're going to want to use a pair of scissors or a box cutter to open up your box. So inside your box, you'll find your bicycle, your seat post, and small parts box. Now let's open up your small parts box to see what's inside. So inside your box, you'll see your pedals, rear reflector, touch-up paint, tools, and also your manuals for your bike. Good time right now to stop whatever you're doing and read the manuals so you get a better understanding of the bike. If you got any questions, you can always reach out to us so we can help you during your assembly. Now let's remove all the packaging material from your bike. I had to use a pair of diagonal cutters, but you can use scissors as well. To remove the front wheel, you're going to want to grab the fender first and slide it out, and we'll just put that off to the side. Now, just be very careful when you remove the front wheel. See that it's interlocked with the crank to just slide that forward. You can now remove the foam and the plastic. So if you didn't already turn your fork forward, you're going to want to make sure you do it at this point. The fork should have a curve to it so it's facing forward, and the brake caliper should also be facing the front. Okay? Now, your handlebars, you're going to want to get this so that they go on inside the stem, and that both brake and gear cable are in the front. So it should look like this for now. We're going to want to use our 6mm Allen key to tighten on the quill stem bolt on the top. When tightening your stem onto your bike, it's important that we do not pass the mid insertion line. Any of these engravings should be inside of the steering column. I'm just going to get this relatively where I like to get it. Just about there. And we can also loosen the handlebar. And get that within reason of where we want it. Now let's install your fender. You're going to want to use your 4mm Allen key to remove these two bolts here. This guy and this one. Now using your 10mm wrench, we're going to want to remove this nut over here behind the brake post. Now that we got the nut off, we're going to also want to take this thin washer, but you will want to leave this thicker one on. Now, when installing the fender, be sure to have the struts on the back side and the shoulder end towards the front. Grab your fender and slide it through the fork, through the brake, and you'll want to put this mount around the hole. Now get your washer and your nut to tighten it down. Secure the struts onto the dropout, like so, using your 4mm Allen key. When you're done, the bolt should be covering more of the front of the strut with a gap towards the back. Now repeat the same on the opposite side. Once everything's in position, you want to make sure that these bolts are nice and tight. Down here, this should be torqued down to about 5 Newton meters, or until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. Before locking down the nut back here, you're going to want to make sure that the fender is at its highest position. like so. Now let's install our front wheel. Luckily for us, the coast does not have a direction on its tire, so we could just install it anyway. To loosen the axle nuts, you want to put the wheel in the dropout with the washer and the axle nut on the outside, like so. Get this on finger tight first. And now let's use our 15 mil wrench to lock down the wheels. You'll want to remove the bike off of its kickstand, or if you're using a repair stand, you'll want to bring the bike down. Loosen these up a little bit, and then apply downward pressure on the frame so that the wheel sits properly in the dropout, and then we're going to want to lock that up. If you have a torque wrench, you can lock these down to about 35 Newton meters, or if you don't, just do this until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. I like to alternate back and forth between each bolt. Let's get the bike back on the kickstand. Let's get your rear fender installed. You'll want to remove this 4mm bolt. Do the same to the opposite side. When you install the strut onto the eyelet, you're going to notice there are two eyelets. You'll want to install it to the one that's higher up and towards the front of the bike. When you lock down this bolt, make sure it covers over the front section a little bit more than the back. The back should have a little bit of a gap to it. Repeat the same to the opposite side. You want to tighten these bolts down to 5 Newton meters or until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. Let's install your seat onto your seat post. If your bike came with a single bolt system like this one, you're going to want to use a 6mm Allen key to loosen up the clamp and install the seat. If your bike came with a double bolt system like this, where it has 2 bolts, one on the front and one on the back, you're going to want to use a 5mm Allen key to loosen the bolts and then install the seat post. Now let's show you how to do it onto the single bolt system first. You're going to want to loosen this bolt here, just enough so that the clamp has some play to it. You want to flip your seat upside down. With a clamp loose, you're going to want to grab this top clamp here and turn it 90 degrees. Make sure that the bolt is towards the back of the seat. Then we're going to want to guide this down so that this part of the clamp touches the rails, like so. Now, grab that lower clamp and turn it back 90 degrees. From here, we're going to want to snug up this bolt here while simultaneously holding onto the clamp so that it does not move around. No need to tighten this down, as we'll do it towards the end of the assembly. For a seat post that uses a double bolt system, we're going to want to loosen these 2 5mm Allen bolts first. I like to loosen mine so that the bottom of the bolt is flush with a cylinder nut. I'll do the same for the front and the back. To get this seat post onto the rails, you're going to want to move this clamp over. You're going to want to then hook the bottom clamp onto the rail and just fish it down here until the other part of the clamp is underneath the rail. If you're not able to easily do this, you're going to want to loosen these bolts just a little more. Okay, now let's give that a shot. Now, we're going to hold everything in place, and we're going to tighten down these 2 bolts evenly. I'm not going to lock them down because I still want to adjust it when it's on the bicycle. To install the seat post onto the bike, we're going to want to open up our quick release lever here. This quick release lever is also used to do any seat adjustments on the bike. Then you just turn it so that it is in the closed position. You'll also see here it says closed. When you close the lever, you should feel a bit of pressure so that the seat post does not slide from left to right. If the clamp is still too loose, there is a knob on the left side of the clamp that you can use to adjust the tension. Now we could go back to our seat post to adjust the saddle. On a single bolt system, we're going to loosen that 6mm bolt again, and then we're going to grab the rails and the clamp together in order to change the angle of it. If it's too hard to do this, you're going to want to loosen it just a little bit more. With the bike off the kickstand, we're going to make sure that this seat post is fairly level between front and the back of the seat. Got the angle correct, and we also want to make sure that the clamp is centered on the rails. You want to tighten this down to about 20 Newton meters or until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. Adjusting the angle on your double bolt seat post is pretty easy as well. You're going to want to bring the kickstand up for this so that the bike is level. So my saddle's a little high on the front, so I'm going to want to bring that down so that the front and the back are level to the ground. To do this, I'm going to tighten the front bolt here. Give that a few turns, and then I'm going to loosen the one in the back. I'll do this until I get my desired angle of the seat. Once you get the desired angle, I'm going to lock down both bolts. If you have a torque wrench, you'll want to lock it down to 8 Newton meters. If you don't, just want to tighten that tool until it leaves an impression on your hand. When installing your pedals, it's important to note that there is a right and a left-hand side. You can tell by the stickers on here, R for right and L for left. You can also see on the face here that there is a stamp of an R, and here a stamp for an L. And on the spindle itself, you'll see that on the right side it does not have any markings, while on the left side it does have markings. Now let's install our right pedal. The right pedal has standard threading, so it will tighten clockwise or towards the right. You should be able to do this by hand, but as it gets harder, you'll want to use your 15mm wrench provided. Holding the opposite crank arm, we're going to lock down the pedal by tightening it down. You should do this until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. Installing your left pedal, we're going to walk to the left side of the bike, and we're going to thread the left pedal on. Note that this pedal is reverse threaded. It will tighten down to the left or counterclockwise. We'll start by hand first, and as it gets harder, we'll use our 15mm wrench to tighten it down. We'll want to lock it down by holding the opposite crank arm, then making sure it's nice and tight. The tool should leave an impression on your hand. Now let's align our stem to the front wheel. If your stem is tight, you're going to want to loosen it a little bit. Then hold your front wheel in place and adjust your handlebar and stem until they're aligned with your front wheel. Once you have them in the correct position, we'll lock down that bolt to 20 Newton meters or until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. We'll also want to adjust our handlebars to our desired position by loosening the bolt down here with your 6mm wrench. Tighten this bolt down to 30 Newton meters or until the tool leaves an impression on your hand. To adjust your brakes, you're going to want to use your 10mm wrench to loosen this bolt here. Squeeze the caliper together with one hand and pull down on the cable. Make sure that the cable is properly guided in here and in here. Now tighten it down. Once that's done, we'll want to give the brake lever a nice firm squeeze. If you need the brakes to be tighter, you can just repeat that process. Let's make sure that the caliper is properly centered. Let's get the red rear reflector installed onto the seat post. Let's remove this screw first, then open up the clamp and put it around the seat post, like so. Using your Phillips head screwdriver, I'm going to use that to tighten up the clamp. I like to set my clamp at its highest position. You'll want to make sure that the clamp is facing the right direction and not pointing downward. Now let's get your front reflector and bring it towards the center of the handlebar. Using your Phillips head screwdriver, let's lock it down. The last step now is to inflate our tires. On the coast, the tires will take up to 40 psi. Now that your bicycle is assembled, you'll want to check every single bolt on the bike to ensure that they're properly tightened down. We encourage you to go to a local bike shop to get this done. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our information is at the bottom of the screen.